I want to talk about two campaigns that we've done through crowdfunding in the last few years. There's a 3-year gap between them. The Live Art Development Agency does a range of projects and initiatives. We have a range of resources which we offer to artists and others. And over the past 5-6 years, we've increasingly gotten involved with publishing books, DVDs, editions of different kinds. And we're a funded organization, which means we're able to put some of the money that we get through our annual funding into publishing. But our ambitions have sort of grown as we've sort of taken on more publishing projects, and we've sort of identified various needs for new titles to work on. And the two books which were part of these campaigns were really important for us in the sense that they sort of met the mission of our organization, which is to develop the sector, identify artists who are at risk of being written out of history. And these were two artists, Athey and Lois, who have been working for decades. They've worked nationally, internationally. They have an incredible reputation, but there had never been books sort of reflecting back on that large body of work before. These were both sort of singular opportunities to do new projects. With all of that in mind, given the range of work that they've both done, we knew that there would be a lot of interest in those books. The artists have had an enormous impact on audiences and many other artists, and we knew that would be sort of hopefully a good foundation to sort of start from in terms of sort of thinking about crowdfunding and a message around crowdfunding. And given those networks, it also was really important because both Ron and Lois had to be really involved in the campaigns, which was sort of in line with the fact that the books that we were wanting to work on also required Ron and Lois to be sort of really involved. Those books were sort of taking shape with an editor at the helm in each case, but also with those artists sort of working very closely in collaboration. It was also sort of really important for us also to sort of through the messages that we were sort of putting out through the campaigns to sort of say that these books were going to happen anyway. We had put money into those projects, but the messages which we were sort of putting out through the campaigns were very much sort of demonstrating that through crowdfunding we were able to sort of dramatically enhance the production values of these books. We were able to have bigger page counts, more color images, and various other things. So we were sort of contributing to making something beautiful, but also something that would have greatly enhanced content. And that was really important for us. But, as I said, we're a funded organization, and so it kind of calls into question, should we be doing this kind of thing? And we really want to be sort of really sensitive to when and how we do these things, but also the messages that sort of go into them. And in both cases, the artists particularly have a lot of interest in their work in the US and the UK, not exclusively US and UK, but predominantly. And in each case, we knew that those who would be likely to donate could be really on both sides of the Atlantic. Although the donations which did come in included a lot of UK donations, we also knew that there was a different culture of giving. There was a different understanding that people give to campaigns like this much more in the States, which I think was sort of really interesting. It also kind of was really interesting to us just to sort of reflect on the fact that by doing a book project, those who donated to the campaign could potentially get the book in return, even if they were on the other side of the world. So obviously you can factor those types of things into whatever perks you provide as part of a campaign. But the fact that the book was sort of central in both cases was sort of really important, because people could guarantee that if they gave £50, for example, they could get the book signed by the artist, signed by the editor, and that was sort of central to what was sort of going on. Could you show the PDF now? One of the useful things, although we didn't plan it this way, was that by doing these two campaigns, that they both had fairly similar targets of around £10,000 each. I hope you can sort of read some of the detail. This is sort of some of the comparisons between how the two campaigns worked out. They were both successful, they both exceeded their goals. The one on the top for the Ron Athey publication we did through Indiegogo, and the campaign was defined in dollars, and the one below on Lois Weaver through Kickstarter, and Kickstarters on both sides of the Atlantic. You can decide which country to go to. That one was sort of based in the UK and in pounds. It was kind of interesting for us to start with Indiegogo a few years ago. We'd never done one before, and although we kind of spent a lot of time and energy sort of thinking what our target might be, we were still sort of in new territory. We didn't really know how it was going to play out. We decided to work with Indiegogo partly because they have the fact that they could sort of define the campaign in dollars, which was important to us, given Ron's contacts in the States, but also Indiegogo have an option where even if you don't make your target, you can get your money, which many other campaign websites don't have. You pay a higher fee to them, unfortunately, if you don't make your target. But with most of the other facilities, if you didn't get your target, we were very nervous that we weren't going to get any money. And so that was sort of, it was a mixture of issues which sort of fed into our thinking behind that. We were also wanting to have as much time as possible. That was a 12-week campaign in comparison to, there's a wee shadow there, but it's 6 weeks with Lois Weaver more recently. I think one of the things we've sort of really learned sort of going through two campaigns is that a slightly shorter campaign can be sort of really much more beneficial in terms of energy and profiling and maintaining interest in the campaigns. And you'll kind of see, if you look at some of the detail here, this is sort of listing the different perks and the levels that were sort of involved with those. I think one thing about this is we probably had too few perks in the first one and we had too many on the second one. If we ever do it again, we'll probably be somewhere in between. The complexity of what was offered with the Lois Weaver campaign probably just went too far. We still made our target, but there was probably just too many perks. If someone's landing on that website, they have a lot to sort of read through, they have a lot to choose between, probably too much. And I think the other big thing about both of these campaigns is most of the giving is at the lower end in terms of the numbers. As we went into the Lois Weaver campaign, we realized that we'd set our lower levels at 10 and 25 pounds, even lower than the Ron Athey, and many, many more people gave there, which on some level is successful. A lot more people were involved. We had 281 supporters there in comparison with 156, but it's a similar total level of support, so it's sort of quite a different sort of outcome. And we probably put far too much attention on some of the higher levels, the sort of top 5 levels, and ones where we didn't get any pledges whatsoever. So it's nice to define those things, but I think unless you really have a sort of confident sense that you have people out there who are willing or likely to give at those levels, it's probably not worthwhile getting into too much time and effort on that. For us, it's kind of interesting to sort of reflect on the fact that these campaigns are probably predicated on getting word about the campaigns to people who know the artists. This is sort of less to do with sort of getting the word out to the wider general public, people that know anything about these artists. Those kinds of strategies might be interesting. We have a contact at Kickstarter who said she put it on their staff choices, which is a special page in Kickstarter where they're profiling things that their staff are really interested in. I'm not sure that makes any difference really. And in fact, when I went to look at that, they had 16,000 projects as the staff choices. So you have to do a bit of searching to sort of find a publication project in Live Art in London. Beyond that, although the Live Art Development Agency was very involved, which I'll tell you a bit about in terms of promoting the campaign and sort of keeping the profile of it up during the campaign, to a large degree it's the artists and the book editors getting to their networks and those networks hearing from the artist which I think is really important. It may be that those messages are sort of bolstered because they're saying that someone's publishing a book about them, but the message coming from the artist, I think, is sort of incredibly compelling. We were probably reliant on Ron Athey sort of to take the lead on his campaign. My recollection is we were promoting it to a certain degree, but not to the level that we did with Lois Weaver. I think we became much more sort of rigorous with Lois Weaver. We really did that sort of thing of mapping out the 6 weeks of the campaign and sort of thinking about what we could send out in terms of updates during those 6 weeks. We had sort of detailed weekly updates on different aspects of the content of the book, different themes in the book, images that were going to be in the book. We released a second and then a third video. We added perks during the course of the campaign. You know, we were developing new social media texts as things went on. Lois Weaver sort of went into a phase of daily tweets. I mean, there was a lot of things happening, and it was kind of interesting to sort of see the ebb and flow of it. If we were quiet for a couple of days, the pledges were really quiet for those days. So things really kind of shifted as we shifted. One other thing which was kind of interesting with Lois's campaign was I think the psychology of a lot of this is very fragmented, how people think about things in different ways. Some people, when they immediately hear about a campaign and they know they want to support it, they might just pledge immediately. We were hearing about some people who said, I want to support this, but I want to support it in the final hour. So they were sort of holding off with their pledges, which wasn't helping particularly. And it was kind of interesting that the average daily pledge went up after we made our target. With Lois, we were sort of £2,000 over our target by the end. And there was one statistic which I came across, it's on Indiegogo, where they say campaigns that hit their goals exceed them by an average of 42%, which the psychology of which I think works with some people. For other people, it's perplexing why you would give to a campaign that's already made its target, but plainly people do. I think my advice in terms of sort of learning how to do it and some of the tricks are sort of a mixture of looking at campaigns. My sense is that these campaigns stay online after they've passed sort of almost in perpetuity. The Ron Athey campaign 3 years ago is still there in Indiegogo. You can look at a lot of campaigns, successful and otherwise, and just see how they went. But it's also really interesting to just, well, you know, you're probably going to compare different campaign websites anyway, just to sort of see how one stacks up against another. But it's good to compare by sort of dipping into their guidance notes or FAQs, which actually give some really interesting guidance on things to think about in terms of how you do your messages, how you make your videos. All that stuff's there. I think what's really important is to sort of be true to where you're coming from. You know, we're an organization, so we probably have a formality to some of what we do, which might be very different from an artist independently leading on a campaign. But also it's just sort of really important for us to always give background and context and detail to what we're doing. So Kickstarter suggests that, you know, your video is going to be much more successful if it's very short, like 2 minutes. And we struggled to do that. Our video is 5 minutes, which is not the end of the world, but I think our videos needs 5 minutes. And we need the text in addition to the video to say what it is we want to say. My sense of a lot of these issues around sort of making it your own is also sort of tempered by the fact that I know £10,000 campaigns may be sort of far beyond what a lot of other crowdfunding campaigns might be. Nonetheless, by looking at things like this, you can actually sort of also just get some do's and don'ts. You may not want to do things the way we did them. You may want to replicate what we want to do. I was looking at a new artist campaign that was just launched yesterday for £1,000. She just wants 28 donors, and she's defined what donor level she wants. It's a sort of very contained thing, and you don't necessarily need 250 pledges. Really sort of pitch it the way that you want. But the other thing which we're really kind of interested in is the perception of having done some crowdfunding, well, now twice, when might we do this again? Should we do this again? We've got no end of interesting ideas for projects, and it was kind of a sobering thought when the new project sort of started getting discussed a few weeks ago, that the first idea that came up was we can crowdfund for this, or you know,
yeah,
and it's
especially as an individual, if you
yeah.
start doing it again and again,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, not how doing that
Yeah.
again, you know, it's like,
Yeah, I think it's really, that's it exactly. I think it's kind of interesting not only to think about, do you want to crowdfund for what you're working on right now, but what might you crowdfund for in the next 2 years? Because what you're doing right now might not be the right thing. You might want to hold off. As you say, sort of going back in again and again. Right now, and this might be different in 20, 30 years as society changes for better or worse. Right now, people are really freaked out when they're asked so much. And if they're being asked so much by the same people repeatedly, it's potentially going to backfire on you. I think it's really important to sort of think about when you might want to do this as effectively as you want. It's also really interesting not to just get caught up in the belief that you've got the perfect project. Really think about who's going to be interested, who are your networks, and what level of giving they might be willing to support you on. After we did our Run Athey campaign, I had an artist producer asking me for advice. He just wanted to sort of talk through what we've discussed, and he was just about to launch a campaign to support the cost of a new performance for an artist, and my strong recommendation was £10,000, which we'd raised for a book that we could send to donors right around the world, is very different from supporting a new performance, which, I mean, it was an incredible artist. There's a lot of interest in that artist's work, but he's likely to be doing another show in the next 2 years. Why would you want to support him now? What is the message about the need for your support right now? And sadly, they went for a £30,000 campaign, which fell dramatically short of reaching its target. There's quite a lot of interesting examples of not pitching it in the right way. This is not to say a performance might not be worth £30,000 and might achieve it, but that one was not the right one at that time. As been said, factor in the costs of the campaign. As you say, you could potentially lose 10% of your pledges between the amount of money Indiegogo or Kickstarter take plus card commission costs and other things. You're going to lose 10%. And there's comparisons between the different websites on that. And also think about how much, as you say, it's going to cost to produce the parts you're providing, but also mail them. The Run Athey book is a gorgeous thing, but it ended up being a heavy hardback, and we had to mail over 100 of them. Many of them air mailed to America. We were completely out of pocket on postage. Kickstarter does, and it's possible other websites have this too, has a function where you can ask for an additional whatever you want, £5–10 to your pledge if you're going to be getting a card mailed to you outside the UK. So you can, this is getting increasingly sophisticated. And in fact, the increasing levels of sophistication over the 3 years between our two campaigns was astonishing. Things have moved dramatically in terms of the functionality of these websites. It's also interesting to sort of look at general trends that go on. One is that people sort of stress an initial push in the first few days and really getting pledges in. can really make people take notice. But if that isn't happening, there's good examples of projects where what seems to be a very flat campaign can be turned around because people do mobilize behind the fact that the campaign is flat and they want it to succeed. And I think that's sort of one of the clear messages that, particularly with these kinds of campaigns where it's networks of people who are really interested in the artists and the projects that we've been doing, that they're not only pledging, but they're actually sort of helping promote the project themselves. And that's sort of a really important layer and what we're sort of trying to encourage people to do. I think the final thing to say is just sort of think that if you have already given to campaigns, why have you given? What does that answer suggest to you, for good or bad, in terms of how you might want to do your own campaign? I've given to campaigns because there's a specific part whose uniqueness is such that I'm not going to get it anywhere else. And I know other people who've sort of responded to the part more than anything else. I know other people who support, and I've done this as well in other campaigns where I'm just wanting to support an artist to do what they want to do. And I'm not that interested in what the parts are. I might be supporting a project on the other side of the world that I'm not going to directly experience, but it's just been an opportunity to provide support. And it's got to be potentially all of those things that different supporters are sort of thinking about. So really sort of pay attention to those types of things as well. I will leave it there. I have more to say if we get into discussion. A lot of the ethical issues around this are sort of really interesting to us, which we're sort of attempting to attend to in terms of all of our fundraising as well as crowdfunding. So perhaps that's one topic that we could pick up. Okay.